this doesn't actually in any way affect the patriarchy. Like, it doesn't actually provide more equality or, like, you know, better hiring rates in the video game industry for, female presenting people. Like, that is a huge problem. They make up, I think, like 15% of the entire video games industry. That is something that, like, I take an issue with. That is something that I want to see results in. In terms of, like, if someone showed this to me and they were like, we did it, the revolution's over, Resident Evil 4 has now been remade for modern audiences. Okay, I'm gonna watch Chris Raygun, something I never do on this channel, because Chris Raygun's got a new video on Vice City and Resident Evil Censored, Glasses Off. The old Chris Raygun and me obviously butted heads quite a bit back in the day, if you ever watched that whole Jack Saint arc. I ended up talking to him offline, trying to clear some things up, and we've been, you know, basically two different worlds. We don't really interact with each other for a variety of reasons. We do very different content. But I'm curious about Vice City and Resident Evil getting censored. So let's see.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Glasses Off, a video series I do every so often, every now and again, whenever—
Oh, you know what? I will say something nice. I deeply appreciated when Chris had the courage to post a video of himself having an anxiety attack live while filming, and I think that does require bravery, and I think it does help destigmatize what exactly occurs, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about people who have anxiety attacks, so I thought that was awesome. So there, I'll get a mix of things in there.
A piece of news tickles my confusingly structured frontal cortex. These videos are usually a little bit more laid back, a little bit less heavily edited than my standard fare. And also, I'm very sick. I don't know if you could tell. Is it obvious? So I apologize in advance if this is absolutely unbearable to listen to. I wanted to talk a little bit today about censorship, specifically in video games, because it's been a little bit of a conversation that's been happening in the games industry recently due to some modern re-releases of classic titles that have some alterations from their original releases. Alterations that some find arbitrary at least, to downright censorious at absolute worst.
Censorious.
Now, you don't have to be an epic video gamist like myself to know what Grand Theft Auto is. I'm sure everybody and their grandparents know what GTA is. Open world, violence, crime, the exact same font as Price is Right for some reason.
Oh, no
Gosh
way.
Darn good old time. It's such a good time, in fact, that the classic PS2 era trilogy, Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, and the universally beloved San Andreas, are being re-released with modern graphics, new controls. It looks like a gosh dang good old time. It really does look great. Look at those weather effects, huh? You ain't never seen PS2 look so weathery. Then a few days later, I'm scrolling through Twitter and I come across this article on my feed. GTA Trilogy trailer removes Confederate flag. And immediately I thought, God damn it, this bothers me so much for such specific reasons, but I know there are certain people who are only going to hear my criticisms, and all they're going to hear is...
Okay, so, I didn't think I'd have to say this, but now it's pretty much just concrete and part of lore. Chris Raygun adores the Confederate flag. He idolizes it, he worships it even. He even wears it as a diaper, and not as a sign of disrespect, but because he likes to have it as close as possible to his genitals. I think that's been confirmed. So, you know, if anyone wants to spread rumors about that, I think it's pretty... You have but to look to the evidence, and it's been pretty clear and concise. That's exactly what has happened.
Oh, I love the Confederate flag, and I want to defend it every single fucking chance I get. This is such a massive inconvenience, and I'm sick. Can't catch a break. I don't know, man. I always hate it when older pieces of art are altered from their original intent with the explicit intention of, you know, appealing to modern...
Okay, you know what's interesting? I'm going to come at this from a different angle, because I too had an upsettingness about this, but it was for something completely different. It was for the works of one George Lucas. I happen to be a fan of the original Star Wars trilogy. I also happen to be a fan of E.T., although I don't know if E.T. holds up as well. I haven't rewatched it as an adult. I have watched the original trilogy. And I was actually pretty pissed off when Spielberg and George Lucas decided to get together and say, we want to reissue our work. And sure enough, I think you have every right to do so. Go ahead. If you want to add dildos into the hands of every single federal agent in those shows, you have a right to do that, repackage it, and then go out and try to sell it. Fine. I'm not saying that they didn't. But what I really hated was that they removed the ability to buy the original trilogy after the special edition came out. So then any single copy you find outside of the old VHS ones is going to be the special edition. It's going to be the ones with all the effects. The ones with all, there's new aliens, did you see, and then there's a scene with Jabba the Hutt and Han Solo, and because he walks around him, because there was a human, he steps on the tail, and it's fun, and now we know who shot first, because they changed the things, and you get that musical number, oh, it's never looked so splendorous, it's amazing, and yeah, the whole thing really was just like, I don't care if you're going to do this, all right? It's honestly, it's fun to be able to go see Star Wars in theaters for the first time, but like, let us have the old ones too. Like, don't take those away forever, you know? So on this, I can find a common ground. Let's say that, okay? If you're going to re-release your shit, which like in video games, look at Silent Hill 2. Maybe my favorite game of all time, if not in the top 10. They re-released a version of it, remastered, new music. All the old dialogue has been re-recorded by new actors, and the game is buggy as fuck. Like, it's just an absolute deplorable state. It's unplayable.
Sensibilities, especially when those changes are so surface level and arbitrary that they almost act in exact opposition to the modern sensibilities they're supposedly intended to uphold. This example in Vice City is actually like really perfect because this character, Phil Cassidy, is a bumbling fucking moron.
How's it going? Hey, Connie! How you doing? It's been too long. I swear you should lay off that boom shine, man. It smells like paint stripper. It's making my eyes burn. Shh. Shh, Tommy. Hey, come over here because there's something I want to show you. Ta-da! Oh, damn!
In all of his appearances, Phil is featured as a manic, heavy artillery arms dealer selling the protagonist military-grade weaponry such as grenades, rocket launchers, miniguns, etc.
Yeah.
Phil presents himself as a military veteran and
Carrie,
regularly discusses
thank
his
you for the rating party of
experiences,
7.
including claims of having
Hello, Raiders. Let me go give you a follow back, and please, everyone do the same. Caro Carrie. Thanks for the raid. We're learning about video game censorship and re-releases, apparently.
flashbacks to the Vietnam War.
And
However, Cam Jones claims that
apologize.
Phil was never in the army, and Phil's records show that he was repeatedly refused for service due to drunkenness and unsuitable temperament for combat. You have a character who is depicted as an unstable, temperamental, violent alcoholic who lied about serving in the military. One of like the worst things you could do, especially in right-wing circles. And your thought for some reason is to distance that caricature from the Confederate flag? I feel like this is such a genuinely confusing thing because the motivation here seems so astoundingly incoherent. Grand Theft Auto is an open world sandbox where the player can do any type of like fucked thing that they put their mind to. Like you can kill a hooker after you've had sex with her. You can rob a bank. You can fucking kill hundreds of police officers like in a like I have personally killed thousands of cops in Grand Theft Auto 4.
That gives you 5.
And
that
it was
gives you 5 stars.
so much fucking fun. Love it. So the idea that the Confederate flag as a symbol was just too much for Grand Theft Auto, I don't buy it. It doesn't make sense to me. And the idea that, like, the left wing wants it gone for some reason, that doesn't make sense either because it exists purely as a joke at the expense of stereotypical right-winger.
No, the left is never called. Like, this is the first time I've heard about this, to be totally honest with you. And honestly, if you're going to have a character playing a racist redneck, then yeah, I don't think it's inappropriate for them to have, you know, things that are, like, you wouldn't play a Wolfenstein game where you're literally hunting Nazis and be like, well, we can't actually show any Nazis though. Be like, why? Well, I mean, we can't show Nazis. That'll, you know, it's just, they're Nazis. We can't put them on screen. And it's like, well, yeah, but they're the villains in the game, and you kill them. I think what would be important is the messaging. Like, is the game how to venerate Confederate soldiers and relive the Confederacy for the glory of the U.S. Empire? Then yes, I do have a problem with said game. I would take a big problem with it. You know, at the end of the day.
It's so confusing, and as I'm
Am I
racking
agreeing
my
with him?
brain,
Well, I have to see what the final point is yet. I'm just telling you my own personal opinion of this, right? To me, what is way more concerning is how can we actually change, rather than change, say, old media and then revamp it into the future. That feels very liberal to me. It feels like liberal idpol. It feels like, hey, everybody, don't worry, racism's getting better because at the end of the day, we've gotten rid of the Confederate flags in Grand Theft Auto. So you know what? This is a huge victory for anyone who's like opposing racism. And to which I'd say, well, doesn't really change the material conditions of people who are affected by that in any way, shape, or form. Like, I wouldn't really consider this a victory, you know? This feels like a liberal victory. This feels like something the libs will celebrate and be like, you know, we're cleaning up mainstream culture. Like, is the game now changed in rating? Because maybe then I would have an argument if you're like, oh, we want to make the game for, like, you know, 12-year-olds. I would be like, okay, well, there's a lot of things you got to change with Grand Theft Auto then. Like, a lot of things. Like, just basically the entire plot, storylines, character arcs, development, writing, everything. Yeah, so then yeah, you can kind of try and sanitize it.
trying to figure out like why they would do this. Like, why would you change such an arbitrary thing for seemingly no purpose? Something kind of lit up in my brain, a memory, a faint memory of a video I did a very long time ago about the Confederate flag. And, well,
Apple right now is going through video games on the App Store and removing them if they contain the Confederate flag.
yeah.
But again, the context does matter, because like there is a lot of dumpware, especially on like unmonitored, well, even monitored ones. Like the Google Play Store obviously has a checks and balances system, but you'll still see dumpware popping in there all the time, where people are just like making quick apps, throwing them on there. Sure, great. And then every now and then you hear a story about like, oh, there was like a racist game on the App Store or something, and you're like, what? So yeah, if it's a game made by white supremacists, or it's a game made to further the aims of either white supremacy or something to that, then yes, absolutely, ban the fuck out of it. Like, I don't think that has a place. If it's like, hey, here's a game where you know, you have to kill Confederate soldiers in the Revolution, or here's a game where you're in an area in the South in which people actually have Confederate flags, because that is just like, that would be representative of American culture. I don't think sanitizing our media is going to do anything in terms of like actually affecting the systems that oppress us, is kind of my point, right? Like, wait, it's possible they removed the flag to make it easier to legally sell in some regions without having to work the art assets. I know of places have been cracking down on it because it's the equivalent of the Nazi flag in some regions. It is. I think the Confederate flag, just in general use, I would make a much stronger argument that in everyday use, just hanging outside your home or just making it a part of everyday American culture, that is actually damaging. Like the permissibility of that. Like, I mean, you're allowed in the United States to hang swastikas. Like, you can't do that in Canada. You can't just put a swastika in your window and be like, oh, it's for the lulz, teehee, you know, kind of thing. Like, I would be way more concerned about like real world use kind of thing.
I totally forgot that this happened, and to my knowledge, this has never been undone. In
the US, you can shout Holocaust denial in synagogues legally. Yeah, you can't do that in Canada. That's straight up hate speech.
2015, Apple banned the use of the Confederate flag as imagery on their App Store, regardless of context. And I remember this was affecting a lot of historical-based games, like things like, you know, real-time strategy simulators that took place in, like, you know, the Civil War era. And because these Grand Theft Auto games are going...
Well, that's it. Yeah, see, like, I agree with shotguns. This feels like liberals care about symbolic victories, you know? Kind of like, hey, by the way, we're smashing patriarchy. Have you seen that there's, like, a whole bunch of defense contracts? The CEOs of those boards happen to be now women. We've got a whole bunch of women in charge of the military-industrial complex. Like, yes, queen energy. We're winning kind of thing. Apple automated the process. It scammed assets for flags. It only took them a few weeks to reverse it. Wow. Hey Lance, you think there's a distinction between the culture and the game's impact a person versus the blood and gore in some games? Well, that one has been completely debunked. Like, it used to be, like, again, I could show my age, all you youngins. Back in my day, we had a game called Doom and a game called Mortal Kombat, and apparently the violence was worrisome because it was going to influence a whole bunch of people. And then, I can't even do a bit for this, Columbine happened, and then the whole thing just became this giant culture war. Is it actually the violent video games that are making kids today more violent? Or is it the music? Is it the, you know, all this death metal and other stuff, and now there's new metal? It's new, it's scary, it's got an NU, it's not even spelt correctly. What the fuck are we gonna do about all this? And at the end of the day, study after study that has come out has shown that these games don't actually make people inherently more violent. In fact, one of the other effects that it had in opposition to the theory was that it was actually making some people more complacent, simply because they were spending so much time playing video games. So I don't think video game violence directly makes people more violent, both because I just wouldn't assume that and because the studies disprove it very effectively.
To be on mobile platforms, including the App Store. Nobody was offended by it. Nobody complained about it. They just want Apple's money. And you know what? Part of me feels like that's almost somehow worse. Do you guys remember when that Call of Duty, I think the Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War trailer showed footage of Tiananmen Square because it was taking place during the Cold War? And then because Activision was taking money from Chinese megacorporations, they had to pull the trailer and re-upload a new trailer that pretended like Tiananmen Square never happened. Remember that? That's some bleak shit. A lot of people kind of jumped the gun on this. I saw a lot of takes on Twitter being like, they're bending to the woke mob. And it's like, nah. They just want Apple money. And while this particular instance of like an old piece of media being like altered...
Well, I was gonna say, this doesn't feel like something that anyone has made any complaints about. I haven't heard people up in arms being like, oh my god, they're re-releasing Grand Theft Auto, they gotta sanitize it. That game better not have any racism or any characters that display racism or iconography. Like, we gotta make the whole thing different.
Happens to be financially motivated? It's not totally unreasonable to assume that some of these things are done to appeal to modern sensibilities. Resident Evil 4 VR, for example, which is exclusive to Facebook's Oculus platform, is a virtual reality remake of a classic video game, made classic by its, memorable story and memorable character interactions. And in this new version, a ton of dialogue has been removed to appeal to modern sensibilities. Leon Kennedy, the main character, occasionally flirts with Ingrid Hunnigan, and that's been entirely removed because I guess Leon can't flirt because flirting's not okay now. There are unsavory comments made.
Okay, but is that I'm grain assaulting this whole one. Like, is that true? Does anyone know about this? I haven't even heard about Resident Evil 4 VR. I kind of really want to play it now, though. No, he's saying left-wingers aren't defending this either. Quartering song this vid and making a copy video already 100%. Well, I can see the quartering going in a different direction than Chris. Chris is kind of taking a, I see this as a non-issue for the left. I don't know if he's able, because he doesn't really subscribe to leftist political ideology, but he won't be able to recognize this as kind of more liberal id-pol outrage than anything. But I think he is right in identifying the fact that they're not actually making a decision to do this based on some massive backlash in the modern age. Like, there's so much worse games now than Grand Theft Auto 3. I think he might be correct in that they were just like, this can get it sold in more regions, locations, and if we just sanitize it a little bit more.
About a female character in the game, and those comments are made by an unsavory character, and I guess that wasn't okay too, so those were removed. And it's not that I like Confederate flags, it's not that I like women being talked to as if they're fucking objects. Tetris is one of my favorite games of all time, and there isn't a sexism or a Confederate to be seen. I really just don't like the fact that video games are the only artistic medium that's open to this level of disrespectful meddling.
As first reported by independent reporter Peter Piesk via the Happy Warrior Substack page, doesn't sound very legit. The changes include the removal of Leon's flirtation with Ingrid Hannigan, the changing of his assertion upon finding an impaled female villager that there's no sex discrimination around here, and Lewis's infamous information that the president's daughter equipped his daughter with ballistics too. I mean, this is just horrible, corny, campy Capcom dialogue. And yes, it's it's not something I would want children to play, or it's not like I wouldn't want kids to play Resident Evil 4 in general. It's like it's a scary, spooky horror game. But for products intended for adults, I don't see the point. This feels to me like either they're doing it again for sanitization so they can sell more, and if anyone celebrates this, it's like it just feels like a little liberal idpol victory. Like this doesn't actually in any way affect the patriarchy. Like it doesn't actually provide more quality or like, you know, better hiring rates in the video game industry for female presenting people. Like that is a huge problem. They make up, I think, like 15% of the entire video games industry. That is something that like I take an issue with. That is something that I want to see results in terms of like if someone showed this to me and they were like, we did it, the revolution's over, Resident Evil 4 has now been remade for modern audiences.
You guys like Back to the Future, right? I love Back to the Future. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Let me tell you what Back to the Future is about. It's about a guy going back in time, his mother trying to pressure him into sex, his peeping Tom father saving his future mother from a rapist who's then just friends with them years later. And on top of it all, you know, there's the added bonus of just the real implication that Chuck Berry stole Johnny B. Good from a white man. And that's all in every modern re-release of that movie. You wouldn't take a book like To Kill a Mockingbird or a movie like Schindler's List and edit the ever-loving fuck out of it just because it deals with unsavory subjects or
Whoa. Spielberg didn't do that to Schindler's List, of course, but he did do that to his old movies. That's the whole thing. Like in E.T., a whole bunch of the FBI agents used to have guns, but he turned the guns into walkie-talkies with technology and then got it a re-release. He's like, yeah, back in theaters, there's new shit. You'll see some wild things. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Unsavory characters. And that's ultimately why I care when little things like this happen. It's not that this is a massive deal. It's not like this is an example of society crumbling at the fucking seams.
No, it's definitely a nothing burger.
Just
Joe
Am I
Rogan.
the only one who wants a parody Joe Rogan account with an egghead guy with Fabio hair named Joe Rogan who only puts out based information and takes?
Thank you so much for the $10.
something that I am personally not alright with on principle. Like, why can't Leon Kennedy flirt? Like, what's so wrong with that? Do characters not flirt? Do people not flirt? Why can't a communist-hating redneck alcoholic wear a Confederate flag shirt? Why?
Well, at the end of the day, too, like, you don't need to update old media to match modern social conventions. You need to make modern media that is a reflection of the times and or where we should be in terms of the Overton window. That to me is way more important. Like, this, again, just seems like corporations being like, okay, time to make more money. What do we got? Resident Evil 4 remake, re-release. Okay, good. Well, we could probably sell it more, sir, if we just did a little tweak here and a little tweak there. And same thing for Grand Theft Auto. Let's make sure we get rid of the Confederate flags because we can sell it in bigger markets, you know? The reason they make change to Vidya, not movies, is because it's easier to do. Updating a movie require lots of time and effort. No, my point is they did. George Lucas and Steven Spielberg re-released their films using CGI technology to change things they didn't like, edit them out, and add new characters and scenes. They did that both to the original Star Wars trilogy and to E.T. I've seen them. I've seen them both.
Why does a protagonist have to be an inherently good and perfect person? Why does a villain need to be made more palatable? I can genuinely see a future where we have video games about World War II that don't mention the Nazis or don't show Nazi iconography. I actually think in one of the recent Call of Duty games, they just didn't even...
I'll be way more... Multiplayer doesn't have swastikas, and this is why. You know what? I would be way more interested. Like, here's where I'm coming at this from a lefty angle. I want to stop seeing every single Call of Duty-esque game be about the glorification of the American Empire and furthering imperialism. And it doesn't matter if they're set in the future, it doesn't matter if they're set in the past, it doesn't matter if they're historical recreations. That just seems to be the majority of, like, first-person shooter military games, even if they're complete fantasies and based in, like, you know, Spaceland or whatever. It's still like, and now we must do this for the glory of America Land, you know, for the good of Spaceland, because Spaceland had it coming. And you're just like... it's, you know how interesting and fascinating it would be to play one of these games that actually tells the truth. I mean, I guess it would be way too horrifying for people to experience. Like, you couldn't do a Vietnam game. Like, that would be absolutely horrifying to do an American POV Vietnam game, where you're either just like bombing civilians, napalming them, just blowing forests out of the place, doing excessive amount of drugs to deal with all the horrors and atrocities that you've committed, you know, people committing rampant suicide, people slaughtering innocent civilians, people slaughtering children, people committing massacres here and there, all that kind of shit, all in Roblox. Like, all of that would be grotesque. It wouldn't be a fun game. You would put the controller down every half hour to go cry, because you'd be like, this is fucking gnarly. And then at the end of the day, be like, yeah, this is fucking war, you know? Like, we keep redoing WW2 games because it's like, well, this was the good war at the end of the day. I mean, yeah. It's like, well, I've never seen a campaign in the Asian theater where you firebomb Tokyo for 20 days straight and you don't really do much else. You just firebomb Tokyo day in, day out. The Paper City, hundreds of thousands of people just incinerated alive, women, children, civilians, you name it. There wasn't that campaign. Why? Because the action wouldn't be that great? Because again, it would be utterly horrifying to do something like that? Because again, that's what happens, you know?
Have a Nazi flag at all, and it's just like, this is fucking weird. It's not that I like the Nazi flag, it's just, what are you doing making a game about World War II if you're not going to talk about the fucking Nazis? I can see that future where you have a video game that's about World War II that doesn't mention the Nazis, but I can't imagine that same future for
Spec Ops: The Line. You have to use white phosphorus and see the side effects of it. The game gave some people PTSD, but wasn't the big... Okay, I'm going to speak as someone who hasn't played it, because all the stuff in the media I was reading at the time was that, once again, it was still kind of from the perspective of the Americans, and while you do have to commit a few, you know, more gruesome atrocities in it, it's still about, at the end of the day, furthering the American agenda, but I could be completely wrong on that. How is Resident Evil 4 scary? Okay, Winston, again, as an old man, we didn't have graphics like the GameCube at that time that were quite that splendorous. So when Resident Evil 4 came out, it was the most amazing graphics we'd ever seen. And you pop in that little teeny disc, the proprietary teeny little disc in that little cube. And I didn't have one, so I put it in my friend's house with the lights off. And yes, it was, by today's standards, no, it's not. Okay, I've played modern horror games. They're fucking nightmare fuel. My God. But, you know, at the time, the whole point of Spec Ops is to question the American agenda. Oh, sweet. All right, let me write this down. I have been woefully uninformed. Spec Ops. Well, you know, call me silly. This is exactly what I was asking for. White phosphorus levels.
I'd say that's the...
All right, Lugo.
This might help.
Fine, set it up.
You're fucking kidding, right? That's white phosphorus.
Yeah, I know what it is.
You've seen what this shit does. You know we
We
can't
might not have a
use it.
choice, Lugo.
There's always a choice.
No, there's really not.
But does the player get a choice? Oh no, you don't, do you?
You ain't Walker. We'll fire.
Okay, prepare to fire.
That in order?
Yeah, it is.
Fine. Launching camera. Camera online, sir.
Okay, targeting online. You ready?
Whenever you are.
Burn 'em.
You need to hit those RPGs!
RPG's neutralized. Burn 'em.
Loading mortar.
You know what's wild is, after reading all that stuff today about the drone papers, like, this is just like extra grim. Do they actually show like scarred bodies and stuff? I guess so. Let's see this. Damn.
Stop talking.
Means the smoke is toxic.
You brought this on yourself.
We were helping.
What?
All right, that's pretty grim.
Oh no.
But the guy who kind of sounds like Solid Snake in every video game military protagonist doesn't seem like he's changed at all from this. Oh wait. Damn, son. Pretty horrifying, even for like PS2. Yeah, I'd heard that as well. You don't actually die from the phosphorus, you die from the poisoning after the effect. Just an absolutely horrifying thing to use in war.
Are those civilians?
Civvies that got kidnapped. It's not possible.
Yeah, it is. That's why Gould stormed this place. He didn't want the king.
All right.
He was trying to rescue his people.
That is horrifying.
Oh, goddammit! Stop right there, Hugo. What it is? He wouldn't listen. We have a choice. He turned us into fucking killers. That's enough, Sergeant. No, control yourself. No.
We need to keep moving.
What? Unresolved. My God, the horrors and atrocities. Never forget the mission. Come on, boys. We got work to do.
For literature or music or film. But it sucks because I know that there are a lot of people who complain about stuff like this that are fucking way far gone. And so
like
I'm
Sorry, I'll
left to
check
be
it out.
like the only reasonable fucking person left with a sane head, congested as
It does
may
not go
be
unresolved.
at the moment,
Gotcha.
to talk about it in a way that hopefully is reasonable enough for the majority of people to listen to and understand without jumping to this weird, insane conclusion that, he just likes Nazis and Confederates. Ooh-wee. It's fucking annoying. And, you know, maybe I'm reading too deeply into this. That's entirely possible. And, you know, forgive me. After a year plus of pandemic living, it's hard not to assume the absolute worst of the future. Very much looking forward to those water wars.
On Palestine.
I know I don't normally make videos like this, and it's been a while since I have. I apologize if this is not what you were expecting. I just kind of felt like I wanted to say something. It's very rare that I feel, you know, a little, you know, passionate about something
This is what you
that I
passionate
read
about?
online. I'm very jaded to a lot of this stuff.
Okay. Look, I'll be honest. I came into this thinking that I was just going to be like, oh, this is ridiculous. Vice City and Resident Evil censored, you know, blah, blah, blah. To be honest, I did end up agreeing with a handful of the things, and maybe from a different perspective, mine being that I think that this is just like, it's liberal id poll, and it's just corporate executives who are like, let's make more money, let's censor the Confederate flags, re-release the game, you know, update the graphics very mildly, by the way. That didn't look like it was an actual, like, you know, remake where they had to actually do a new engine or anything like that. They basically just upgraded everything to 1080p. But sure, and let's go out and make money. Meanwhile, we can celebrate, and you know, the liberal id poll quota has been met. We no longer have Confederate flags. Leon no longer flirts with the female characters in the game, and the world has changed for the better. Patriarchy smashed, racism over, and here we go. But in terms of like, you're reading video game news on a regular basis, and this is the one that pops out. It's like, I have to make a video about this. I have to talk about this. I mean, there's so many worse things in the video game industry, like just across the board, from the amount of hours that employees have to work in order to meet deadlines, the crunch, the fact that they're not paid overtime sometimes, the fact that these AAA games industries are destroying everything that was wonderful about video games, putting in DLC packs, putting in all these like upgrades, putting in clothing packages that you have to buy, aesthetics that you have to buy where you used to get them free in games, free to play games where fucking the entire profit model is basically a casino, and you're trying to get people as addicted as possible to these games so they actually start spending real money on these like fucking gambling systems. Like, all of that is fucking horrifying, you know? Ubisoft depths grooming children, yes. Blizzard and their entire cesspool of fucking sexism. They had a Bill Cosby room. Like, goddamn, loot boxes. Fucking loot boxes. I fucking despise loot boxes. Or even the fucking, those massive, over-bloated, like, for $400, you can get the collector's edition of Borderlands. And you're like, okay, cool, what does it have? The whole thing is literally a loot box. And then when you open it, there's one toy you'll never play with, and then a giant book you'll never read, and maybe a CD of music, and you don't have a CD player anymore. And it's like, yeah, there you go. Oh, but you also get the Seasons Pass. You're like, Seasons Pass? Yeah. Oh, yeah. The game that you just paid full price for, you now need a pass in order to play it on a regular basis. That's just for us to be able to, you know, maintain servers and do upgrades and stuff like that. Oh, and while you're in the game, check out the marketplace. It's really cool. You spend this own, like, it's a proprietary currency we call jabloons, and you're like, oh, neat. And you can buy jabloons with real money. And then when you spend jabloons, it won't even feel like you're spending real money. You just get in there and spend all the jabloons you want, buy all the upgrades, the shirts. Did you know that we've got like a Snoopy costume coming out? It's gonna be so lit, brah. So yeah, pick up all that shit. Video games are fucking tight.
That I read now, so I wanted to take advantage of the fact that I felt a little bit of a spark and
yeah, fucking don't get me started on NFTs. Like, honestly, the only good news to come out of the NFT world recently is the fact that Steam was like, effectively, we're banning it. We're banning any games that feature NFTs, which will limit the proliferation of video games that have NFTs by a lot. But by no means is going to stop it. There's too much money to be had. All of them are like, oh shit, yes. Blockchain games, hell yeah. Hell yeah. You don't even have to spend real money. It's all fake digital money. It's cryptocurrency. None of it's real.
Speak my mind a little bit, even if, you know, to the overwhelming majority of people, this is probably just like a really whiny video about something that probably doesn't matter in the grand scheme.
Eric Adams is probably NFT.
Thanks for popping by. If you made it this far, I appreciate you immensely. I am sick though, so I am going to go inhale like 26 gallons of chicken noodle soup and possibly expire. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you're feeling a little submissive, and comment if you want. I don't know. Even if you don't want to, just comment, you know. You know what? Even if you don't like the video, like it anyway. It really does help me. Like, honestly, like, fuck what you want. It's all about me because I'm sick and I get to play that card. So, yeah. I'm gonna go drink some Dayquil. Take care.
Dayquil, get fucking high. Don't mix Dayquil and NyQuil, because...
I don't know, I'm just getting annoyed because I don't fucking know. I give up, that's it.
Cool. Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form. Available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free. Just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Just, we will build a ladder to heaven to deliver you the daily news. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are your most humble of clownish jesters. To our lords, Trevor R. and Alexander Thaler, you have our undying fealty. To our knights of the round table, Nate, that one guy, Hagbird Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariana McCarthy, Daniel Sutton, Ants are still running the world, Coulter Smith, Tom Groh, Val 9000, Jenna Tal, Quiet 185, Anna Loves Riley, Riley and Anna, Omni, Poodlehawk, The Tim Caucus, Multimondi, Trevor Janis, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojack, Saren 42, Chronic de Hemphog, Catherine, Radical Maniac, Ramon Acosta, Incosin, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Political Puppy, Andreas Chiringuito, Zach Christensen, Josh Mickelson, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We shall meet you in the tavern, and we raise a drink, and we salute you.